Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Open Space Summit. We're very happy that you have joined us tonight. And my name's Brian O'Leary, and I'm the Executive Director of the Chester County Planning Commission. I do want to note that we are recording the session tonight, so I'd ask folks to mute themselves. And also, please turn off your video at this stage, and we will have an opportunity later during breakouts to see everyone. We're not going to have questions and answers during the discussion. Instead, we have the chat feature enabled for comments, and we're going to have breakouts where we hope to have some really good, robust conversations about open space in Chester County. There is going to be a poll during the presentation, and you will be taken to the breakout rooms based on what you pre-selected during your registration. And now I'd like to introduce the three commissioners who are here with us this evening. We're very happy they've joined us, and I will turn it over now to our chair, Commissioner Moskowitz.
Hi, good evening, everybody. Thank you for having us. This is a great event. You know, Chester County has been a statewide leader in preserving open space for over 30 years. And a few of the reasons why we've been so successful include the financial investment that has been made for more than 3 decades, combined with strong partnerships with our land trusts. We have generous landowners who truly value conservation, and we have the overwhelming support of the greater community. Above all else, Chester County acted early while there was still open space left to preserve. 80% of Chester County's voters said yes to a bond referendum in 1989, devoting tax dollars to preserving open space. Now, more than 30 years later, with nearly 30% of our land preserved, there is still overwhelming public support to keep the effort going. As recently as 2017, the Public Survey for Landscapes 3 revealed that protected open space and the environment was by far the highest ranked issue of importance amongst county residents. 43% of survey respondents taking protected open space and the environment as the highest priority. And last year, Chester County allocated $7.25 million for agricultural preservation, conservation easements, and acquisitions, and park improvements across the county. Our Planning Commission's Vision Partnership Program provides additional funding that can be used for municipal open space planning. And in fact, this year is the 25th anniversary of the Vision Partnership Program. Last year, we also incorporated our Parks Department into open space preservation, creating the Department of Parks and Preservation, adding staff capacity for county parks to be more thoughtfully programmed and stewarded. Thank you again for taking the time this evening to focus on Chester County's preservation progress. And now I'd like to turn it over to Commissioner Maxwell. Thank you.
Thank you so very much, Chair. Just a few years ago, not weeks, Chester County completed a report with the help of many of our partner organizations, identifying the economic value the protected open space provides. That report went beyond the environmental value of Chester County's open space program to confirm the financial value of our green spaces. Specifically, the report revealed a few things. Homes located near protected open space are worth an average of $11,000 more than homes that are not near protected open space. That adds over $1 billion to the value of Chester County's housing stock. Open space also saves our communities nearly $100 million a year by providing environmental services like flood control and improved air quality that, if lost, we would have to pay to replicate. Physically active people are healthier, and open space provides a place where people can be physically active at no cost. Open space provides over $100 million in recreational value. More than $150 million in medical costs are avoided because people are using our protected open spaces to be physically active. Activities on protected open space like agricultural, tourism, and maintaining our parks and trails generate an estimated $200 million in spending and over 1,800 jobs. By any measure, Chester County's decision over 30 years ago to invest in open space preservation has been paying dividends. And with that, I turn it over to Commissioner Michelle Kickline.
Thank you, Commissioner Maxwell. Last year, Chester County's open spaces, our preserves, our parks, our trails were a tremendous resource for everyone. They became a place to exercise, a place of entertainment, and a place to be safely with our family and friends. The pandemic has given many of us a reason to take up a new hobby like biking, fishing, and bird watching, as evidenced by the shortage of our outdoor equipment. And for those of us like me who took up hobbies like baking and cooking and eating too much, some of us who never considered going to a park or trail for recreation discovered how valuable these spaces are and made visiting them a part of their daily lives. Our trails and preserves saw record attendance in 2020, and we expect that trend is here to stay. Usage of our county parks was up more than 10% in 2020. In the summer months, the Chester Valley Trail saw a 77% increase in use. And use of the Schuylkill River Trail increased by over 100%. Just yesterday, we visited that site where 4 more miles are being added to the Schuylkill River Trail, which I am sure will attract many more people. So I thank you for joining us this evening. And now I would like to introduce our next speaker, Molly Morrison. I too thank you for joining us. Molly was one of the creators of Chester County's Open Space Preservation Program back in the late 1980s. And for the past 20 years, she has served as the president of Natural Lands. Molly knows a lot about the value of open space preservation, and we are so pleased that she could be part of this summit. Molly?
Thank you, Commissioner Kickline. I am thrilled to be here this evening with all of you. There's been a lot of history made in Chester County, amazing foundational stuff, Revolutionary War battles, an iron industry that fueled the Industrial Revolution, unsung heroes who provided critical connections and shelter on the Underground Railroad, truly inspiring. But the reality is that Chester County continues to make history every day with its fundamental commitment to preserving open space. Chester County and its citizens and its municipalities have been prioritizing open space, farms and agriculture, water and watersheds for decades. It is in our DNA. It matters. It defines who we are. Later this evening, we'll hear the latest numbers of acres saved, a running total that Chester County has been tracking since the early days of the Open Space Preservation Funding Program, which, as the commissioner said, began over 25 years ago. And while our beautiful Chester County landscapes have been the focus of preservation by conservation groups for years, it was Chester County's willingness to work with a diverse citizens group to design an open space program that made the creation of parks and trails and the preservation of natural areas and farms a cornerstone of the quality of life in Chester County. And in designing those building blocks of the program, the group said, this will make a difference to our children and our grandchildren and will benefit both the environment and the economy. So when you look around Chester County today, what do you see? Really great things. Wonderful downtowns, a diverse economy, low unemployment, many world-class cultural institutions and attractions, and what many counties do not have and wish they did, a remarkable array of protected open spaces. So my remarks tonight are a recognition of what's been accomplished, a thank you to the commissioners for their ongoing leadership and funding for the program. A big thank you to the staff of the Chester County Department of Parks and Preservation, to the Chester County Planning Commission, and of course to the conservancies who breathe and eat and sleep these duties every single day. And particularly to the municipal officials and volunteers who are in the best position to take advantage of the funding and the conservation tools that are being shared here tonight. So tonight I have a request of all of you, which is to continue to make open space and recreation a public priority, personally and in the public policy agendas which you lead. We are at an interesting tipping point. Right now, 35% of Chester County is developed and 35% is undeveloped and unprotected. 35% is undeveloped and unprotected. For all of our progress, there is still more than 1/3 of Chester County in play. And imagine if that 35%, 171,000 acres, were to be developed. Some of it will be, as it should be. We have the need for expanded housing and for new business opportunities. But our goal should be to keep pace with that development by protecting a like amount of open spaces. What we do now and over the next 25 years will determine whether the wonderful aspects of Chester County that we point to with pride today, both economic and environmental, will remain for our children and grandchildren. So one last thought, along with the natural areas and the farms and the parks and the trails, I hope we can make it a priority to also save our historic landscapes and our cultural landscapes. They are indeed as much a part of our heritage. So thank you. Thank you for all that you do to ensure that Chester County remains one of the premier locales in the US in which to live, work, and play. Thanks. And with that, I'll introduce our next speaker, Dave Stauffer. Dave became the director of the Chester County Parks and Preservation Department in the fall of 2020. I have to take off these glasses. He's a licensed landscape architect in Pennsylvania and has over 22 years of experience in both the private and public sector. Prior to becoming county director, he worked as the capital projects coordinator for the Chester County Facilities and Parks Department. And as such, his work focused on the planning, design, and construction of the 22.5-mile regional trail network and park improvements within the county's 4,500-acre regional park system. He's been the project manager for the design and construction of 3 phases, completed phases of the Chester Valley Trail, and the county's phase 1 of the Schuylkill River Trail and the current Schuylkill River Trail phase 2 project underway. Dave.
Okay, thanks, Molly. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you, everybody, for joining us in the summit this evening. I'm going to start here with a slide that shows the Parks and Preservation Department's mission statement. I won't read that to everyone, but I do want to leave that up while we take a pause. We are going to, it's this point in the program, we are going to launch the poll. So Rachel, if you wouldn't mind launching the poll, that should pop up for everyone. And the question is, which role best describes you and why you are here today? So if you wouldn't mind completing that, we'll pause for a moment here.
Looks like we have about half of the attendees responding now.
Okay. Thanks, Rachel. Seems like there's still a few come in. We'll go ahead and share the results. Okay. So it looks like we have a variety of participants this evening, which is always good. It looks like the highest response looks like it's the general open space supporter. So that's good to see as well. All right, I'm going to stop sharing the poll and continue on with the presentation. The County Parks and Preservation Department has 3 focus areas. They're agriculture, open lands, and parks and trails. Under the agricultural focus area, our objective is to work to preserve agricultural lands, to support local farmers, protect natural and historic resources through prime farmland preservation, and strengthen the agricultural economy. Under open lands, Our objective is to partner with land trusts and municipalities to permanently preserve open lands, protect natural resources, and provide public access to nature. And finally, under our Parks and Trails focus area, our objective is to engage the community to be out in nature through a variety of programs and events that promote health and wellness while educating and preserving natural, cultural, historic, and recreational resources. The Agricultural Land Preservation Program for Chester County was established in 1989. At that time, the Chester County Commissioners authorized the Agricultural Land Preservation Board to implement the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania Ag Conservation Easement Purchase Program and the Chester County Challenge Grant Program. Again, the goal of these programs is to strengthen the agricultural economy and protect prime farmland. Details of the Commonwealth Program and the County Challenge Program are located on the Parks and Preservation website at chesco.org/parks. In addition, this evening, we have Jeff Shellington, who's the department's Ag Preservation Coordinator. He's going to be leading as a moderator in one of the breakout rooms. So he'll be in room number 1 later in the program, along with Don Cairns, who's a member of the County Ag Land Preservation Board. So where are we at in 2021? These figures represent a summary of both the Commonwealth and the County Challenge Program. Over the course of 32 years, the county has entered 543 farms into the Ag Preservation Program. The acreage eased on these 543 farms is 42,190 acres. This represents an investment of just shy of 119 million, with an average cost to the county per acre of just shy of $3,000 per acre. I wanted to share with everyone. I get updates from the Department of Agriculture on the status of the Commonwealth Program, and the most recent information that was provided shows that Chester County is number 4 of all 67 counties in the Commonwealth. We're behind only Berks County, Lancaster County, and York County in the amount of ag land preservation that's been completed through the Commonwealth Program. As far as southeastern Pennsylvania is concerned, in the Philadelphia metropolitan regional planning area, Chester County is 5,000 acres, has preserved 5,000 acres more than both Montgomery County and Bucks County combined. Next, I'm going to quickly talk about the Open Lands Preservation Partnership Program. As the name implies, this is a partnership grant program where we look to work with conservancies and municipalities to aid them in the purchase of natural areas, land for parks and trails and conservation areas, and also to make public benefit improvements on conservancy properties. Our program can fund publicly accessible trails at conservancy preserves and related amenities, in addition to funding nature-based improvements for things like habitat restoration and water quality. On the municipal side, again, the program funds acquisition, land for parks, conservation and trail easements, and also park and trail improvements. So we're looking to partner with municipalities to help them build and construct facility and trail improvements. Again, detailed program information and the program manual are available on the County Parks and Preservation website. The first Conservancy project was completed in 1990. Since that time, the county has worked with conservancies to protect 11,676 acres, and that represents an investment of $60.62 million. On the municipal side, the first projects were completed in 1989. There's been 6,717 acres protected since that time, representing a county investment of $53.84 million. The last and final focus area is the county parks and trails. You can see at the top here that the 7 county park sites that encompass approximately 4,500 acres located throughout the county. On the bottom, you can see the regional county trails, which are the Chester Valley Trail, which is 13.5 miles in length, the Schuylkill River Trail, which is currently 5.75 miles, as Commissioner Kickline indicated earlier. There's also 4 miles under construction up in North Coventry and East Coventry townships. And finally, there's a Struble Trail running north along the east branch of the Brandywine outside of Downingtown, which is our shortest segment at 2.6 miles, but it's also our oldest. It's been in place since 1979. On the park side, I just highlight the first 3 on the list. Black Rock Sanctuary is our smallest park. It's the only one located in a borough located in Phoenixville, and it's also a former desilting basin along the Schuylkill River. Hibernia Park is our largest county park at over 1,000 acres, located primarily in West Callan Township, but also in West Brandywine Township as well. And Nottingham Park is the oldest. It was the first park in the county park system, which was dedicated back in 1963. So again, if you think back to some of the earlier remarks, I think it speaks to the vision and the commitment over the course of the time to go from the first piece at Nottingham to a 4,500 acre park system today. And then just a quick slide about visitation. As you can see, our numbers grew considerably between 2019 and 2020. As part of our presentation to the County Park Board, we also ran numbers through mid-April of this year. And if you take a straight line projection of those figures through the first few months of the year, through the end of the year, we're projecting visitation numbers around 1.5 million in 2021, which represents an 11% increase over 2020. So while it's good to see people out using and enjoying the parks, I think we've all experienced increases in numbers of users. Certainly that presents some challenges in terms of maintenance, overcrowding, things like that, which lead to questions of, is the increase in use impacting natural areas? And do we have the resources in place to continue to be able to accommodate increased levels of growth? And I think that really also presents an opportunity. I think there's a newfound appreciation for our parks, trails, and open lands. And I guess it's my hope that there'll be an increased awareness and that we can capture some of this increased user base and really build the base of advocacy for the improvements of our parks, trails, and open lands. This is my final slide. I just want to again note that the county department's website is noted there. There's a lot of information there, including, it's a revamped website that we launched late last fall. So you can do everything from view the grant application programs to finding an online reservation system for renting a pavilion or making a camping reservation or registering for a program within our parks. We've also increased our social media presence. I'd encourage you all to check us out on social media as well. Thank you very much. I'm now going to turn it back over to Brian O'Leary.
Thank you, David, for that great summary of what's happening with our parks and trails. What I'm going to do now is share my screen for a presentation about Landscapes 3, the county's comprehensive plan. So for those of you who don't know about the county's comprehensive plan, it's called Landscapes 3, and this is the third of the Landscape series of plans. And it really helps set the foundation for what we do in Chester County about planning and our open space. In Landscapes 3, really the vision in Landscapes 3 is to balance our growth with our preservation. And I think Molly Morrison touched on that very eloquently about that need to balance the two. And so Landscapes 3 is divided into 6 goals, and 3 of them are really targeted at the preservation side. Preserve, about open space; protect, about our natural areas; and appreciate, about our history. The live, prosper, and connect are about how do we address the growth that's coming and our communities. What I'm going to do is focus on the preserve goal and talk about that a little bit. And the goal is essentially designed around preserving open space. It has 5 objectives. And the first is just protect, a good amount of Chester County's remaining undeveloped land. And you heard about that, about 35% of the county is unprotected. We need to prioritize our preservation efforts and make sure that we're preserving the most important elements of that 35%. And we got to do this in a way where we're all working together to really make sure that we're accomplishing what we need to. And because we have so much open space, the stewardship of that becomes more and more important. How do we make this open space work for the best for the environment and the community as a whole? And I think a big objective is to help promote the benefits, make sure everyone understands what the benefits are of open space. I think we all inherently know in our gut, but at times it really needs to be spelled out. And then there are 9 open space recommendations, actions in Landscapes 3. And the first is related to that, what I just talked on, and that's open space education. And the county produced a report, Return on Environment, that you heard about a little bit from Commissioner Maxwell, about some of the benefits of open space and on our environment. If you haven't seen it, I encourage you to check it out. It is on the Planning Commission website. Increasing protected farmland is another key element. You heard about farmland protected through the state program, about 42,000 acres. We have about probably 95,000 acres of our preserved land is actually farmland. Just wasn't all done through that program. And that's probably up to about 49% of total farmland in the county is now protected. And that has increased that percentage over the last couple of years. And then natural habitats remains a key element to protect and to preserve open space properties that have important natural areas on that. We continue to do that, and I think we see that particularly in some of those conservancy protection that you heard about. Recreational properties are needed, and we look at all the use that our parks and trails are receiving. That same thing is happening at the local municipal level. The county continues to expand its park and trail system to provide recreational benefits. In addition, we look at our historic properties like this one that we have at Hibernia, and really an important element of what the county does. We cannot overlook historic preservation when we think about open space. When we think about Chester County's character, we often think about open space, but overlaid on that is our historic heritage, and it's important really to be preserving both. We want to connect our open space as much as possible. Certainly the trails help us do that, and preserving corridors along our waterways. And related to the objective to get in there and do restoration and stewardship, there's been a lot of significant efforts on Red Clay Creek or Plum Run or Brincoed Preserve by many different groups trying to restore riparian corridors along our streams. At the Planning Commission, and you're going to hear more about this later, are doing efforts to support municipal ordinances and policies that protect open space. And then finally, we want to convene open space summits. These are pictures from our first open space summit where we celebrated 30 years of the open space preservation program. This is from 2019. Unfortunately, we had to cancel last year. And thank you all of you for participating in our current summit. All of these different actions are outlined in Landscapes 3, and I encourage you to check it out on our website. And now I just wanted to present a short video that highlights some of the actions that took place in 2020. And you can get more info, as I mentioned before, at our website, chescoplanning.org. So that's an overview of what's happening with Landscapes 3. It is being implemented by probably everyone who is here on this summit call today. And thank you for all that you have done in preserving open space, and I encourage you to continue in your efforts. Now I'd like to introduce Judy Thomas, who has been with Chester County for 19 years, hard to believe. And she is a manager of the Conservancy and municipal grant programs that were described early. So Judy, take it away.
Thanks, Brian. Okay, everybody, it's time for the big reveal. If I can make that happen. By the end of 2020, 29.7% of Chester County's land was permanently preserved. That's 144,247 acres of preserved farms, parks, nature preserves, land trust eased lands, municipal lands, homeowners association lands. I know 144,000 plus acres is hard to visualize. So to put that number in context, that's more land area than the cities of Philadelphia and Pittsburgh combined. So in the year of the pandemic, our land preservation partners, which includes our land trusts, municipalities, landowners, of course, our funders, our citizens, our taxpayers, and the general open space supporters that we have a lot of here tonight, we're able to keep pace with acres preserved in previous years. That is an impressive accomplishment. And to me, it clearly proves how important land preservation is to the Chester County community. The world pretty much shut down. Hollywood couldn't even figure out how to keep producing our favorite TV shows, but Chester County was able to preserve over 2,100 acres of precious land. So what were some of the projects that helped secure this 2,100 acres in 2020? 2020 saw the culmination of an 11-year effort to preserve 1,700 acres owned by the Strawbridge family in Elk, New London, and Franklin townships. The final 337 acres were preserved in March of 2020, and all of this acreage now is part of the state's White Clay Creek Preserve. The Brandywine Conservancy brokered a very complicated land deal that preserved 577 acres of the Glen Roy property in Lower Oxford and West Nottingham townships. The property is now owned by the Oxford Area Foundation. It's a nature preserve, and it's due to be opened by the end of this year, due to be open to the public. Through the county's Ag Preservation Program, we preserved 20 farms totaling over 600 acres. And on top of all of that, our land trust partners preserved over 380 acres using conservation easements. As Molly mentioned earlier, there's still a lot of critical land left to preserve, and we certainly have the commitment to do so, as we've seen this past year. So I really believe that by this time next year, we'll have reached or surpassed our interim milestone of 30%. Right now, we're at 29.7, and I think by next year, we'll have hit 30 or past it. And I want to stress that's an interim milestone. It's a stepping stone to an even larger number. Again, we now have over 144,000 acres preserved. Contributing to that growing number on a regular basis is East Bradford Township. Our next speaker is Mandy Cantlin. Mandy is East Bradford's manager. She's been with the township for 17 years in various roles, and she's here with us today to tell us about the township's flourishing open space program. Over to you, Mandy.
Thank you so much, Judy. And I'm so pleased to be here. This is such a great summit and a great opportunity. Yes, my objective tonight is to talk about East Bradford's open space program and to highlight how, for us, having an open space tax has contributed to the to our success in preserving open space. If I can get the slide to advance. Let's try this. There we go. So I'm going to talk about this from 3 different perspectives. The first is dates, and I'll give you a little bit of history of our program in East Bradford. And second, we'll look at the numbers, talk a little bit about what the tax has meant in terms of dollars and cents and acreage. And then lastly, a picture is always worth 1,000 words. So I'll highlight some of the projects that simply would not have been possible without our tax. So let's start with the dates. Our open space program really started in 1998. And it started with a vision that is captured here in our winter 98 newsletter, and I won't read it. I only have 10 minutes. But the statement here really conveys the value of open space, both as a resource and as a sense of place. And it conveys an increasing concern from residents about development and announces that the supervisors are contemplating a tax on earned income to preserve open space. And this highlighted sentence that indicates that this really is a defining moment for East Bradford. In 2020, hindsight couldn't be more true. It was a defining moment for the township. After this announcement, the board held a special meeting to gauge the public's interest in the concept, and the majority of those in attendance supported a tax to preserve open space. Later, the board adopted an ordinance to move that question of an open space tax, and they were talking about 1/8% on earned income, to a referendum. And in November of 98, that referendum passed with roughly 7 out of 10 voters in favor. In 1990, that tax collection begins. We receive a little over $1,000 that year, and we create our Open Space Review Board, which was a 5-member board whose function was to identify, review, evaluate, and rate open space opportunities and submit those recommendations to the boards of supervisors. But in 2000, our tax revenue quickly shows its limitations. By the fall of 2000, we have roughly $400,000 in available funding and nearly $700,000 in opportunities. So the supervisors pursue a second referendum for another 1/8% for a total of 1/4% on earned income, and again, the referendum passes. A few more dates here. We created our first official map in 2001, and that map has continued to be an invaluable tool for preservation. And in 2002, we have another defining moment. Opportunities continue to outpace the funds, so the board makes the decision to borrow $12 million from the Delaware Valley Regional Finance Authority to fund open space preservation. and then use the open space tax receipts to pay the debt. As we'll see, that funding had a tremendous impact on what the township was able to accomplish. And lastly, two more notes. Both in 2002 and 2004, the township hosted dinners to present the program to key property owners, but more importantly, to create connections between property owners who had easements already on their properties and connect to residents who owned property that the township wanted to see conserved. So now let's look at the numbers. Here's a quick look at our open space tax receipts over the years. We can see the gradual build with the two referendums, and we can see in there in the middle the impact of the financial crisis. Currently, we average about $1.1 million in receipts each year. This looks compelling on its own right until you factor in the funding stream that was made possible by the loans. And that's what this does. This chart adds available funding to the mix. We can see the funding stream from the tax on the bottom there in the orange, and we see it in proportion now to the loan that we received in 2002. That giant spike in green was that $12 million DVRFA loan. And that gets followed by several years of gradual spending to accomplish projects. And I want to mention just a few things that aren't evident here. One is that twice we sold properties in the context of this program, and that generated some income. But we also borrowed 2 additional times for specific projects. We borrowed about $4 million in 2011 to accomplish a 95-acre acquisition. And we just borrowed again last year in 2020 for $6 million to accomplish a 170-acre acquisition. And in both cases, you're not seeing the impact of that here because the money was going in and out in the same year. However, if we look at the expenditure side, you can see 2 types of expenditures. In the green, you see the open space projects. These are acquisitions, easements, and other ancillary expenses, surveys, appraisals, legal fees, and that such. And then in the orange, you see debt-related expenditures, principal, interest, charges associated with the lending. You see a spike there in 2018 where we paid off one of our borrowings with a land sale. But what I want to emphasize here is kind of this erratic nature of projects. And we would not have been able to accomplish some of the projects that we did were it not for the loans that we acquired. I also want to follow up on some of the comments that other folks have made about grant funding. We have leveraged grants through the years, mostly through DCNR and the county, of course. But I also want to note that this isn't the complete picture. This is showing the grants that the township has acquired, but oftentimes when we've been doing easements, the land trust that we've been working with has been able to leverage grants on their side as well. So this isn't showing the complete picture in terms of grants. Here's our numbers in a snapshot. In sum, about 1,300 acres preserved, about $29 million in investment in open space preservation. And in terms of acreage, about 40% of that has been in fee acquisitions of land that we own, and about 60% in easement. So as I wrap up, let's look at the pictures. This is the fun stuff. I was asked to highlight about 2 projects, and I narrowed it down to 5. It's kind of hard to choose. And we're going to start with the Paradise Farm Camp property. This was our first large transaction at over $4 million, a 340 plus or minus acre easement, which is roughly half of the Paradise Farm Camp's property holding. The township also secured about 2 miles of trails for public use as part of that easement. And if you're not familiar with the Paradise Farm Camp, their mission is to connect children to the outdoors, and they've been doing that since about 1875. The organization serves over 6,000 children a year through day camps, school programs, and resident camp partnerships. The next project I wanted to highlight is the Harmony Hill Nature Area, which we purchased in 2005, and it was a fee acquisition. However, we had no intention of actually being the owner of the property long-term, our initial vision was to ease it and transfer it to a land trust. But several factors led to the township keeping the property. For one, it had been the property of the Sunoco Paper Products Company in Downingtown, and they had used the property as a dump for paper waste. And that was certainly not an attractive feature to a land trust. It also had a really old dam and a really dilapidated bridge over the Brandywine, which are two more daunting liabilities. And then thirdly, it had been used as an informal mountain bike park for years, and mountain biking was not a use readily accepted by the land trusts. So the township ended up keeping the property, and we worked with mountain biking and hiking communities to create a sustainable trail network. Today, there's about 7 miles of natural surface trails and a portion of the multi-use Brandywine Trail. Third is Mount Bradford Preserve, another fee acquisition that occurred in around about 2008. And this had been the subject of a 25 acre subdivision. Upon acquiring the property, we worked with Natural Lands to prepare a stewardship assessment for the site. I think it was one of the first ones that they did. And the plan provides advice on how to care for and steward the natural resources on the property. And as a result of that plan, we did a meadow restoration project, which lasted a number of years. And we're currently working on some trail development and a 9-hole disc golf course now that we're working on with a volunteer group. 2 more properties here. The Strode's Barn property was an acquisition in 2 phases in 15 and 18. It's the home of the former Strode's Sausage and Scrapple plant, if you're familiar with that. It's located on the Plum Run, which has gone through several phases of restoration work initiated by Brandywine Red Clay. And it's also located in the Strode's Mill Historic District, which has played a notable role in the British troop movements leading up to the Battle of the Brandywine. And it's going to be the future location of an interpretive center and multi-use trail that will ultimately connect Westchester University's Gordon Nature Area to the Brandywine Trail and Greenway. That is the future plan for the site. And lastly, and most recently, is the Star Farm acquisition. Again, a 2-phase acquisition, our largest. This is really a keystone in the northern region of the township, connecting numerous open spaces and connecting and nearby ones that we've talked about at the camp and the Harmony Hill Nature Area and a number of other easements. It connects pretty much Valley Creek to Brandywine Creek, very scenic, very developable. Future vision is still being determined, but a very, very significant acquisition. But the point I really want to make with some of these is these are all very large projects, and none of them would have been feasible without the tax and without the loans that the township has leveraged over the years. So that is my presentation. I am going to hand this off to Dave Shields, who's the Associate Director of Land Conservation at Brandywine Conservancy, who on June 30th, I understand, will be retiring after 38 amazing years. Congratulations, and take it away, Dave.
Thank you, Mandy. I'm going to share my screen, call up this slideshow. Thank you and good evening, everybody. And this probably will be my last public presentation. I guess it's a good thing, right? I've been asked to give an overview of land conservation tools in Chester County. And I thought that a good way to maybe do this would be through the projects that the Brandywine Conservancy completed last year. So with that, I will share, go to the next slide. Hopefully this will work. There we go. So this map, though a little dated, probably around 2018, is a good overview of protected lands in Chester County, as well as northern Delaware County, Delaware County and northern Newcastle County, Delaware. All the colors on this map represent protected lands. And they also represent pretty much the full scope of all the conservation tools that we in the land trust community, as well as the county and other governments use to conserve land. Clearly you have a lot of fee simple land acquisitions shown here, such as the Brandywine Conservancy's Laurels Preserve or public parks, which are shown in blue. But you also have conservation easements represented here as well. Conservation easements are typically used for a wider variety of conservation values, such as natural resources, water resources, scenic view sheds, and historic sites. But there are also many more specialized easements that many people are familiar with. The agricultural easements, which are shown in brown here, historic facade easements on historic structures. You have riparian buffer easements, and trail easements are also shown here. The map also includes lands protected through the zoning process, specifically, say, the open space from developments and under a cluster plan or similar arrangements for zoning. So that's shown in purple. And by the way, the dark green is lands under easement with Brandywine Conservancy, and the lighter greens are lands owned or eased with other land trusts. And these conservation tools can involve donations. They can be purchases, they can be bargain sales, they can be what I call buy, ease, sell deals. They can be buy, transfer deals, or they can be transfer of development rights and otherwise mandated dedication of open space through the municipal process. So in 2002, what an awful year it was with a pandemic for our country and even our world. It was just terrible. But for conservation, it was actually a very good year for Brandywine Conservancy. We were able to conserve 957 acres in total. 380 acres were conserved through donations and purchased easements. And surprisingly, Judy, you mentioned 380 acres in Chester County, but this 380 acres includes parts of Delaware County, Newcastle County, and Lancaster County. So don't be confused. We were successful in acquiring fee acquisition to the Glenroy Farm. That was mentioned, 577 acres, and we raised over $7.5 million to finance these acquisitions. We've conserved farmland, natural lands, historic sites. 2 of the properties allow limited public access, and a 3rd property is fully accessible, will be fully accessible by the public. This map shows parts of our operational area, and I just want to point out that we'll be working, I'll be talking, the new projects in 2020 are shown in red. It's up here in Honeybrook Township, down here around the King Ranch area, in the Brandywine Battlefield area along the Delaware PA line, and then over along the Octorara Creek. So in Honeybrook, which is predominantly an Amish agricultural community, we partner with the township and the county to purchase an agricultural easement. In the King Ranch area, which we'll be visiting soon, we accepted the donation of 2 easements. And to the east of that, in the heart of the Brandywine Battlefield, we got 2 more easements. Along the Pennsylvania-Delaware border, surrounded by the First State National Park, National Historic Park, we were able to secure an easement. And then all the way over in the western part in the Andrews Bridge area of Lancaster County, we secured 2 donated easements. And finally, down here at, along the Octorara Creek is the Glenroy property. So I will talk a little bit about each of them in detail. So municipal open space funds, which Mandy talked about, well, they really do fuel land conservation in Chester County. This slide shows 35 Chester County townships that have some type of open space preservation funding program. When combined with county, state, federal, and even nonprofit funds, literally tens of thousands of acres in Chester County have been conserved. In other words, money is an essential conservation tool. So our Amish easements, which I pointed out a little bit of the northern part of the county, here in Honeybrook Township, we accepted a easement on a 30-acre property. It was jointly purchased with the township and the county, where we partnered. The county holds the easement. Brandywine is a named beneficiary. And the township, I should point out, is at least 31% protected. I'm sure it's more now because we've taken a few easements since January of 2020. I should also mention that in addition to preserving our farm, working with the county to preserve farmland, we also work with the landowners to help them implement best management practices on their farms, designed to protect our surface waters as well as retain the prime agricultural soils that we all value so highly. In the King Ranch area, where we're back in 1984, there was only about 5,000 acres conserved. Today, over half of this 7-township region of 106 square miles is protected land. That translates into 34,500 acres, a nearly 7-fold increase since 1984. And these are 2 properties that we conserved within the King Ranch area. One is a 22-acre property on the northern part, and then we had 2 large parcels that are owned by the same owner that were also conserved with the conservation easements that were donated. I should point out that another element here was that the landowner of the 22-acre piece was not in a position to pay the cost for granting the easement. We were able to secure a donations from outside funding to cover our costs and endow the easement. That's another element of the conservation tools we try to employ. The Brandywine Battlefield is probably the highest priority area for preservation in the Brandywine Valley from a historic preservation point of view. It is the Battlefield is a National Historic Landmark, and it is constantly being threatened with development. It was a big deal then, and it's a big deal now. This map shows preservation between 1989 and 2018. We began with about 1,100 acres protected in 1989, and much of that was for the preserved open space. And then in 3,130 acres by 2018, and that figure has grown. The purple line here represents the National Historic Landmark boundary, and it was within what has been protected today is another representation of our conservation tools. It consists of donated easements, purchased easements, fee simple purchases, buy, sell deals, municipal parks, and open space through cluster developments. And the 2 properties we conserve are roughly the same at 10 acres each. Both were donated. What I guess is interesting here is that this property was acquired by the American Battlefield Trust with a federal grant from the National Park Service. The trust then donated the conservation easement to the Brandywine Conservancy, and it hopes someday to donate the fee title on the property to Birmingham Township. Another project was here at the First State National Historic Park. This park was created in 2013, and it's Delaware's first and only national park. The park was expanded a little bit later to include some of what this land in Brown Beaver Valley. In the middle of the park, you'll see here is 2 parcels, or what appears to be 2 parcels that were in holdings to the park that were unprotected. And clearly they were the highest priority for Brandywine Conservancy and of course the national park to protect. We were successful in doing so at the very end of last year. This 40-acre parcel was recorded right at the end of 2020. It includes 3 acres in the state of Delaware. So the easement was recorded in both Delaware County and in Newcastle County, Delaware. And I might add that the Delaware County computer programs were hacked and we were almost unable to record this easement before the end of the year. So because they finally got their computer programs back online. But the property is completely surrounded by the national park. So clearly this land has an incredibly valuable property. And the easement itself would represent significant value as well. And because the easement met the federal standard tax, the Internal Revenue Code standards for a qualified conservation contribution, and because the easement was donated, it qualifies as a tax deductible contribution on the landowner's income tax for income tax purposes. And I should point out these large tax deductions that could potentially arise from the donation of a conservation easement are an important incentive for landowners to contribute their properties through conservation easement and preserving them. In Lancaster County, all the way across Octorara Creek and just north of the Octorara Reservoir are two new easements that we accepted of 50 and 105 acres. One of the easements was secured, our costs were assisted with the funding from a SEEP program, which is part of, it's the Conservation Easement Assistance Program managed by the We Conserve PA, which is now what's formerly the Pennsylvania Land Trust Association. And finally, the last property I'm going to talk about is our Glenroy Farm acquisition. Glenroy Farms is along the Octorara Creek. It's just below the reservoir, and consists of about nearly 1,000 acres of land. It's been in the same family for 3 generations. The Tehran family did not want the property to be developed, but nor could they afford to give it away or to keep it themselves. So they contacted my colleague, John Goodall, seeking his help to conserve the property. And you'll see here,
David, you've been muted.
oh no, what? Am I still muted?
Not now.
Okay, I don't know what happened there.
It's okay. Thank you.
In the yellow parcel here is mostly farmland. So John helped the family apply to the county agricultural program, worked with Jeff Shellington, and in 2019 the county was successful in acquiring an agricultural easement on 219 acres here. We were during the course of a 3-year period, we were trying to raise the money to buy the whole thing. And the central and western portions of the property consisted mostly of natural lands. And there, John suggested we try to create a nature preserve. Well, our board was not interested in us owning the land, so we needed to find an appropriate entity to take title of the property and manage it as a nature preserve. Let's see if I can try to get the next slide to go, which it won't.
Just double click in it. There you go.
There you go. I got it. So this image shows the piece of land that we were able to acquire late last year. It's 577 acres. It's on the east bank of the Octorara Creek. It's about 3 miles of the creek. There are also many miles of interior streams. There's lots of ponds. There's 400 acres of mature forest and successional woodlands, open meadows and old farm fields, all of which must no longer be used for agriculture. We raised $6.7 million from DCNR, Chester County, and foundations to help fund this transaction. Well, they talked about the ownership. If Brandywine wasn't willing to own it, and we approached the state about them owning it, but they weren't interested. But a very local nonprofit foundation, the Oxford Area Foundation, was very interested in owning the property. We partnered with them throughout the process. Ultimately, our staff would manage to plan to manage the project, but OAF was an essential funder and a key partner to taking title of the property. I should point out that you don't see it on this map, but there are over 10 miles of trails running throughout this property. And over the 3-year period, we were able to raise the $6.7 million needed to fund it. There was $3 million from Chester County, $3.3 million from DCNR, and another $300,000 from Oxford Area Foundation. And the Brandywine Conservancy also contributed towards the purchase. As the named awardee of the grants, Brandywine Conservancy had to take title of the property, but at closing, we immediately also conveyed the title to the Oxford Area Foundation. Now, the foundation is currently constructing a parking lot. They're making improvements to the interior, the miles of trails within the property, and they're just generally readying the property for visitation by the public, which we hope will happen maybe later this spring or into the summer. And the Oxford Area Foundation has also agreed, per our agreement with the Chester County, that they would install a creek access facility on the property. So we continue to work with OAF to help them raise the necessary funds to acquire the 157 acres across Octorara Creek in Lancaster County. This has not been an easy project, certainly not in the middle of a global pandemic, but it really was worth it. And great thanks go to Chester County for its funding support, for DCNR, and for OAF. They've been great partners, and I know they'll be great stewards of this property. So I thought I would share with you just a few pictures of the property. Let me see if I can get this to work. These are aerial views. We had a drone shot, videos taken of the property. And that's the Octorara Creek here. And then here's the creek again, and another shot of the creek. And thank you very much for listening this far. Who am I turning it over to, Judy?
I'm going to turn this over to Jeff now.
Oh, Jeff, you're up. Jeff Shellington.
Thanks, Dave. Good evening. I'm Jeff Shellington. I run the Ag program for Chester County. And I'm happy to introduce our next speaker, Don Cairns. Don is a farmer from Salisbury Township, and he happens to be the co-chair of the Chester County Ag Land Preservation Board. He'll be discussing agriculture in general, as well as the Ag Land Preservation Program from a farmer's perspective. So let's welcome Don.
Thank you, Jeff. Welcome, everybody. It's great to spend some time with you here this evening. I appreciate the opportunity. I want to change it up just a little bit. Instead of sharing procedures and facts and figures with you, I want to share some perspective through our personal journey. And I hope that the story that I'm going to tell you will provide some context for a few key points that I'd like to make as I close here. So when I was young, like many people, I had this calling to farm. And I grew up in a farming community. I had some beef cattle. I was in 4-H, but we didn't have a farm of our own. But I still had this calling to farm. And my wife grew up on a dairy farm. But by the time we got married, her brother had already taken over that farm operation. So that was not an option for us. So early in our marriage, we were working hard, saving money, but we felt this stronger and stronger calling to have our own farm. So then in 1997, it kind of hit us. The opportunity arose. We went out and bought a 100-acre farm here in Chester County. And wow, talk about jumping in with both feet. I can tell you that was a big deal, and times were tough. We were young. We had just turned 30 years old. I was working another full-time job, trying to make the numbers work. And, then reality sets in. We figured out the hard way that you do need to get a few hours of sleep at night, and working 2 full-time jobs made that difficult. We had young children at home, and so we had to look at our options. So we had started looking into land preservation. We had this problem we had to face. We had a huge mortgage on this farm that we bought. So looking into land preservation seemed like we should explore it. So we applied, and the first time around, I was shocked because we didn't qualify. We didn't make the cut. Our score was not high enough to get in the funding round. I thought, well, this can't be right. We have a good farm, and it's in a good farming area. But as I dug in, I realized that the scoring formula for ag land preservation really is geared toward clustering farms together. And I realized there were no other farms in our neighborhood that were preserved. So that hurt us. So I'm a pretty determined person. So we decided to try it again. And we tweaked our application to try to make it more appealing. And that included even donating money back into the program. And so the next time around, we did succeed. So in 2002, we successfully entered the program. And then I realized, wow, our farm is preserved, but nobody around us is. And that got me a little concerned. So I'm going to share my screen here with just a couple little slides. I need our host to enable my screen sharing. Let me try that again. It's not letting me share my screen. Okay, I'm going to continue. So we were an island in the middle of unprotected land, and I didn't want that to be. So I went out and visited our neighbors and knocked on doors, and we had good farmer to farmer conversation. And that actually turned out to be very, very successful because fast forward, today we have, yeah, it's still not letting me share my screen. Sorry about that. Fast forward today, within 1 mile of our farm, we have 950 acres of land preserved through the Ag Land Preservation Program. So that was awesome. What I found through that process of talking to the neighbors, though, is that it's very key to understand why farmers and farm owners would preserve their land. And we as preservation advocates need to understand the mindset of our landowners. Now, I have some good news for you. Good news is that there is usually a strong bond between farmers and their land. They don't just view it as an asset or a commodity. There is really a bond there. And now that being said, each farm family is unique. So some farm families need to look at land preservation as an estate planning tool. And say, for example, there's a farm family, operating farm, maybe they have 4 children. One of the children wants to take over the farm, but most of their asset value is tied up in the value of that farm. So how do they equitably handle their estate planning with very little liquidity? So this is a great way to do the liquidity. All right, looks like I'm able to share my screen now, so let me try that. I'm gonna jump back. Okay, is that shared?
Yes, it is. Thank you, Don.
Okay.
Sorry about that.
Thanks, no problem. Okay, here is what our farm looked like in the middle of unpreserved territory when we preserved our farm. A lot of good farms around, but none of them were preserved. So that's why I went visiting the neighbors. And so now fast forward to today, here is a map of that same neighborhood, and everything in green is now preserved through the Ag Land Preservation Program. And that block is even growing. There's another easement that's in play right now that's going to add to that block. So just wanted to share a little visual there. Okay, now back to where we were. So estate planning, you've got a farm family, they can use liquidity to make their estate plan work. And there's 2 key reasons why that works. And why it's so important. Number 1, it keeps the farm in the family. And number 2, it keeps it in agriculture. Because if they just sold it outright to a developer, you lose in both of those areas. We lose it for agriculture and we lose it out of the family. So that's wonderful. Now, in our case, our preservation goals were completely different. We were at a totally different phase of life. So in our case, we used the proceeds to manage our debt, pay the debt down on the farm. But what that allowed us to do is not just take a trip to Bermuda, which we didn't do, by the way. It allowed us to reinvest in the farming operation. So by reinvesting, what I'm talking about is increasing the viability of our farm. We built grain bins, we invested in new equipment, we've even bought some more land. So I'll just share my screen one more time and show you a couple pictures of what that looks like in real life. Here's what I mean by investing in equipment. That's a modern high-tech corn planter, so we can be good stewards in the planting process. That specializes in no-till planting. We're big on no-till. Here's some harvesting equipment that we've invested in. Grain storage and handling facility we've invested in. I'm looking at a 20-year span of time here, but this is just what we can do when we have the tools to preserve our farm and create some financial liquidity to expand. So there's the grain bin setup, and I am now going to discontinue sharing. Stop share. Sorry about that. All right, so in our case, it was different. And today what this has enabled us to do is we've acquired more land. We now own about 250 acres of land, and we actually farm about 1,600 acres of land, much of it rented from other local farm families, and a whole lot of that land is preserved. Now, I'm sharing this with you not to draw attention to myself or our family. I'm really trying to show you how this program can work successfully. Now, we could talk for hours about the benefits to our county residents about open space. Okay, let's face it, open space is beautiful. Open space is helping the environment. Open space creates a wonderful sense of place and a great quality of life. But on top of that, and in my opinion, most important of all, it keeps agriculture viable. Here's the most important thing I'm going to tell you tonight. Agriculture is the foundation of our society. Without viable agriculture, we don't have parks. We don't have a transportation sector. We don't have an education sector. We don't have a business sector. Without agriculture, we don't have a society. So preserving agriculture is critically important. I want to thank our county commissioners for their unwavering support of this program. I want to thank the Ag Preservation staff for the job that they do. It's terrific. I have the privilege of serving on the Ag Preservation Board. We have a wonderful board that works hard to push these projects through. And I just hope that hearing a little bit about my story has inspired you. I invite you to join our breakout session at the end, ask questions, and I just appreciate the chance to share from a farmer's perspective. And with that, I'm going to introduce our next speaker, and that is Paul Fritz. Paul is a landscape architect and planner, and he hails from Syracuse, New York. For the past 4 years, Paul's been the Director of Design and Technology Division at the County Planning Commission. And that includes a staff of GIS mapping analysts, a graphic specialist, a design planner, IT personnel, and 247 review planners who review proposed subdivisions, ordinances, and land development. So without further ado, Paul, I will turn it over to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Don. Good evening, everyone. As Brian mentioned earlier, that the 8th recommendation under the preserve goal in Landscapes 3 is to support open space policies and ordinances. To implement this recommendation, it was called out in the comprehensive plan to provide more information to planners, local officials, and citizens interested in investigating tools to protect open space in their communities. A starting point is what I'm going to share with you tonight, which is an inventory of existing plans, programs, and ordinance standards that exist in many of our municipalities. So last year, we started the inventory work with the idea of providing an online resource that identifies on a map the municipalities supporting land preservation using 7 effective preservation tools. Open space plans, a tool which provides a policy basis for future land protection. Agricultural zoning, a tool which limits non-ag land uses on ag lands. Cluster subdivision ordinances, which ideally require at least 50% open space in residential subdivisions. Transfer of development rights, which redirects development in proposed preservation areas to growth areas. Funded programs, which 36 of our 73 municipalities use to fund open space preservation. Official map, which is a map and ordinance used to designate areas for open space protection, among other infrastructure items. And lastly, agricultural security areas, which is a tool which has several benefits and is also a requirement for a parcel to be considered for an agricultural conservation easement. Some of these tools, the Planning Commission already tracked, such as agricultural zone, or a partner tracked, such as funded programs. And after compiling what we had, we then tasked our 247 plan reviewers, Wes Brucknow, Paul Farkas, and Glenn Bentley, to dig into the existing zoning ordinances throughout the county and pull out additional municipal information about each tool that would be helpful to planners, local officials, and citizens. So now if you visit our county website and you go to our planning topics and you go to open space, you'll see our 6 categories, including the mapping of all the open space in the county, the return on environment document that Brian mentioned, and then our open space tools for municipalities. And when you click on this, you get to a list of e-tools related to open space, and I'll talk about those more in a minute. And then you'll see a new thing we just added today, so we're debuting this today, an inventory of open space plans, programs, and ordinances. So if you click on that link, you'll come to a map interface, or a web interface, excuse me, which was created by Benny 9 in our GIS department. And basically, it's a website that has the 7 tabs of the tools I previously mentioned. Each page provides a brief description of the tool, a map showing where the tool is occurring in Chester County, whether it's municipal wide, such as a funding program, or specific to a certain location. In this instance here, we're showing agricultural districts. A few other things to note that you can explore on this map or this web experience is there's more information on the tools. So one is you can click on the map itself and a pop-up will occur and you'll have more information related to that certain district within that certain municipality. The other information that's available is links to our e-tools. So in this instance, we have an e-tool, which provides more guidance on implementation of this tool and other resources, links to other resources. And in this case, agricultural zoning. And then a couple other things to add, in addition to the pop-ups, if you pan down on each of the tabs, there's a table that relates to the pop-ups, but it's a sortable table. So you can find out how many ag districts are in a municipality or in a region. And then we also provide this data in a downloadable spreadsheet, which actually in some instances gives you more information than what's actually on the map. So we give you many opportunities to go exploring in this web interface. So just to review quickly, we're getting tight on time. We have 7 maps total, which gives their user a sense where the tools are occurring in the county. And we hope you are interested, you'll explore this application and find it useful. We've just begun to use this as a resource in-house, and we know our partners will be looking at it as well. And as time goes on, we'll look to make updates to the maps and tables as changes are made in the county. So thank you all. I hope you find this map interesting, and now I'll pass the baton back to Rachel.
Thanks, Paul, and good evening, everyone. We are running a little bit behind. There has been so much good information to share with you all. So I'm going to be quick, but I would like to share with you something that I'm excited about that the Planning Commission is going to be working on in the near future with some partners. So we are going to be working on this open space outreach initiative. And even though it's been over 30 years since the initial bond referendum passed to fund open space preservation in Chester County, like was said earlier, saving open space still rises to the top of our residents' priority list. And so it's a central theme of Landscapes 3, and one of the ways that the county is going to support implementation of Landscapes 3 is to sort of reintroduce and reinvigorate the conversation around open space preservation. And many of the people who were involved in the initial passing of the bond referendum 30 years ago are no longer involved. And so there's some current municipal officials and just general public who may not be as familiar with these really technical concepts and processes that you heard about this evening by some of our presenters. So the Planning Commission is going to be partnering with the Department of Parks and Preservation, as well as many of our land trust partners, to provide information to decision makers, from municipal officials to landowners, about the importance of preserving open space, and by providing information and technical assistance about the process and the various tools that are available for these efforts. So our desired outcome for this initiative is really that all municipalities have effective systems in place to achieve their own open space preservation goals. We're not going to tell anybody what their goals should be, but we just want to be able to help them get there. So we think it's important to engage not only the municipal audience, but also the public in the conversation, because municipal actions, as we know, are really derived from public support. And also because landowners donating easements constitutes a significant amount of our open space success. So I wanted to just point out this logo on the screen, and you saw something similar at the beginning of the summit, that this is sort of a take on the original logo that was created to promote the 1989 bond referendum. And so we are sort of refreshing it and are going to be pushing it out there with some various promotional materials. So we want to get it out there just like it was out there in the 80s. And basically our approach for the outreach initiative is going to be multi-pronged, but we will be sending municipalities the results of the inventory, the map that my colleague Paul Fritz just shared. And we with our partners will be working with municipalities to directly support their efforts, whether it's to help them establish an open space review board or to update their zoning ordinances, or just generally brainstorm with them how they can achieve their goals. And then we're also going to be developing and presenting some educational content geared towards both landowners and municipal audiences that will probably be in a webinar format. So that's coming later this year. And so this brings us to the end of our formal presentation. We'd like to take a moment to extend a heartfelt thank you to all of you who have been waving the open space flag all these years. And to our wonderful speakers this evening, especially you, David Shields, who is going to be retiring soon, for all your contributions throughout your career. And to the municipal officials who are here tonight who support open space preservation initiatives, to preservation-minded landowners, and to the rest of you. We saw in our poll that the majority of people are preservation-minded individuals who just support this and value it. So thank you all for all that you do. There has been so much progress in the past 30 years to make Chester County a statewide leader in open space preservation. And there are still plenty of opportunities to preserve land that's critical for water quality, flood control, wildlife habitat, recreation, and the agriculture industry. So let's keep going. So now that we're all excited, I know that we are near our closing time, but we do hope that you will stick around for a few minutes to ask questions to our presenters in smaller groups in breakout rooms. So there's 3 options for breakout rooms, and you all selected one when you registered, so you will automatically be sent there. But if you find yourself in a room that you're in the conservation tools room, but you really liked Don's presentation and you wanted to talk to him about agricultural preservation, there is an option, if you have the latest version of Zoom, to select your own breakout room. And I'll show you how to do that. So basically at the bottom of your screen, if you click breakout rooms, this box will appear. And if this box does not appear, that means you don't have the latest version of Zoom. And so you can either select your breakout room by selecting join, or in your menu bar, you should have an option to leave the breakout room. That will send you back to the main meeting room that we're all in now, and you can just request to be reassigned. And if you select leave meeting, then you will be out of the meeting and you'll have to rejoin. So with that, I believe Suzanne is going to send us all into breakout rooms. And thank you all again.
Yes, I am. And if anybody does not go into a room, I ask for a little bit of patience and we'll get you to where you are assigned to.